Well, hey guys, welcome back to this Be Willing series on purpose-driven work. Now, in the last video, I shared with you 3 simple strategies you can use if you're uncertain about what your purpose is in the work that you're doing to narrow down what your true calling is. Where do your passions lie? What is the work that God is calling you to do? And one of the benefits of finding your purpose, I mentioned at the end of the video, is this, that when you find your purpose, it will radically change how you think about risk. And so that's the topic of today's video. What is risk? Why do we run from it as we do? And how should we really deal with it? So let's start with what is risk. Risk is simply the likelihood or the chance that whatever you're attempting is going to end in failure. Okay, so whenever you attempt something like reaching out to a new contact or starting a new product or trying to launch a company, you have a vision of what success looks like and you have a vision of what failure looks like. And so risk is simply the chance that it's going to end in failure. And one of the things I'd like you to think about is this. When you really look at the opportunities that you've had over the past year or longer, doesn't matter. How often are you saying to yourself, hey, you know what, there's no way I can pull that off. I'm not experienced enough. I'm not smart enough. I don't have the right contacts. Whatever it is. How often are you not taking those risks because you don't want to deal with the embarrassment or the failure or the rejection? And I think if we're being honest, most people are far too often shutting risk down and walking away from people and opportunities and the calling on their life. And there are radical negative implications for shutting risk down. All you have to do is look at the last 2 or 3 years around the world when individuals and companies and governments tried to eliminate all risk. It kills creativity, it kills joy, it kills productivity, and most importantly, it makes it impossible for you to operate in your purpose. This is not a good thing. So let's talk about why is this happening? Why are we so risk averse? And if you recall from the very first video that I put out there in the series, I said that faith, what you have faith in, and culture have a radical impact on the work you do and how you do it. And so in this case, culture has a radical impact on risk. So if you don't like the word culture, just substitute society in there. So what does society say about risk? Well, society doesn't really talk about risk directly. It actually comes in the back door, and this is what society tells us. Hey, a desirable person, a person that we all want to be like, it has these elements. They're certain, they're confident, and they're competent. Right? Those 3 things. And we see that portrayed in movies and in books and on the news all the time. The reality is no one is all 3 of those things all the time, and that is a foolish goal to attain. And let me just expose, I'll just take 2 of them and expose why this is not realistic. Let's take certainty, right? The world says certainty is something that you must have. Human beings are wired to want to know what's going to happen next. Have you ever been in a situation where you had no idea of the outcome and you recall how you felt? It is very anxiety provoking. And so we hate uncertainty. And so we fall victim. We're basically suckers for every product, every tech app, every seminar that's going to tell us how to be more certain. It's not going to work. It doesn't work. And it's not a realistic goal to have. Okay, so the result of our need for certainty is we're walking away from our purpose. We have this illusion that we're in control. We are not in control of most of the things in our life. So we can take certainty out of it. Let's take just one more, and then we'll jump into what we can do about it. Let's take confidence. Right? Have you heard the saying, "Never let them see you sweat"? That's like given as a piece of wise advice. That's the stupidest thing I have ever heard. Think about this. If you're trying something new, if you're trying something that has high impact and that's something that you really care about, you mean to tell me the worst thing in the world when you're putting yourself out there is that you feel anxious or look nervous? This makes no sense. This makes no sense. It's more important that you try things and try to accomplish your calling than how you look. If you want to know why public speaking is like the #1 fear people have, it's because of this insistence that I must always look confident. And the reality is, how many of you actually walk around every day feeling that way? Nobody does, right? And so you can take all of these reasons why risk is being shut down, but you can also expose them as total lies, and it makes no sense. So where do we go? How should we look at and manage risk? I'm going to give you 3 simple tips that you can think through. Hey, you know what? Knowing them is one thing and they seem obvious, but actually living them out is a totally different thing. So the first tip, number 1, risk is an essential part of life. You cannot live your life by eliminating all risk. If you think about parents, if you think about governments that try to eliminate all risk, does that ever work out well? It doesn't. You need a certain amount of risk to do your job. You know the way I think about it? You're not God. You don't control the outcome. And I'm not telling you to reframe failure. What I'm really saying is failure is just part of life. To think of failure as something negative is foolish. You won't live a true life if you're always running away from risk. Risk more and just accept the fact that things aren't going to work out some percentage of the time. Okay, number 2, know which risks to take. This is actually very challenging. So the first clue to know which risks to take are you have to ask yourself, do I really know what my purpose is? Because when you're operating in your purpose, there is a lot more room to take a lot more risks because the risks are worth it. You know, there was just, I don't know if you know who this guy is. There's this guy called Daredevil. He's a social media star, and he would scale up these tall buildings and other structures, and he would take videos and post them on social media of, they were amazing videos. But the guy just plunged 700 feet to his death. I'm not judging him. What I'm saying is, as an example, there are risks that are not worth taking, and you have to know which ones they are for you. Now, one of the ways you can enhance that is you can surround yourself with people that know you, that support you, and that have your best interests in mind, and you can be vulnerable and transparent with them about the risks that you're about to take, and you can get their feedback. Okay, so that's number 2. All right, number 3. This is the most important one. Understand the root. What's at the root of our risk avoidance? And here's what I believe is at the root of it. At the end of the day, human beings are all the same. We all want the same things. There are a few different things we want, but in some sense, we all want to be loved, we all want to be seen, and we all want to be heard. You know, we basically want to be a part of a group of people that accept us. And so what we believe is, many of us, that we're going to gain acceptance through accomplishment. And so this is why you see people working so hard. They think, if I become CEO, or if I become whatever it is you aspire to be, a star athlete, the best mother, the best student, that means I can feel good about myself. If I feel good about myself and I'm successful, other people will accept me. The reality is, nobody does that all the time. And and we don't have time to explore this, if you really go and start to research very successful people, many of them will tell you that they're not happy. And so what happens to them is they're driven for the next accomplishment, thinking that's what's going to make them happy. That's what's going to make them feel like their life matters. Here's the reality. Here's my deeply held belief that the only thing that really matters is your relationship with God. God gives you a purpose, and he's already accepted you. Now, your job is not to go out and to insist on everything being successful. You're now free to go out and do the work that you've been called to do, knowing that you're going to have failure and knowing that you're going to have some success. Those two things are no longer the goal. And when you take success and failure out as the goal, risk becomes a whole different issue, right? In that sense, in your career, the biggest risk you're going to take is not doing what you're called to do. So I hope this helped you just rethink risk a little bit when it comes to your career, and that you sort of take more opportunity to dive into the things you're being called to do and see what it does to change your outlook, your energy, and your enthusiasm on your work. All right, guys, thanks very much, and I'll talk to you next week.